to the Allegheny Northern in N-scale, and today we're going to be talking about shaping scenery. And we're going to do some very basic discussions on how I am going to approach the scenery here for the new sections of the Allegheny Northern. Now, in particular, I'm going to say just north of the port scene or the harbor scene where the intermodal terminal is going to be. So to give you a little bit of reference, here we go. I'm going to spin around. There's the boat. There is the actual harbor. It's going to make up most of that section right there down to those bridges that you can just see on the left of your screen. And then on the right of your screen, I've got another set of bridges right here. And so what I want this area to be, and for those of you who have been to, I'm going to say an East Coast beach, because I know the left coast is different. The left coast is very different. And so if you've been on the eastern side of the U.S., you know that there's oftentimes not only you have the ocean, but you have where the ocean comes into the land and it makes sort of a either a bay or maybe a small like tributary type river, and you get kind of a marshy, swampy, still ocean water, but kind of not the ocean directly area. And so what I want to do is I want to bracket my harbor scene in scenes like that. So if you have ever been to, I'm trying to think of a good example. If you've ever been to Savannah, Georgia, or more specifically like the Tybee Island area where you have the Savannah River, it goes right out to the ocean. It's a very big river. It's a very deep river because they use it for those big container ships to get up into the port of Savannah. You kind of know what that area looks like and the kind of feel that I'm going for. Now, because we are the Allegheny Northern and this is more of a northern setting, we don't really have anything cool like that here in the north, but we're going to sort of mimic it here, and we're going to use a little bit of modeler's license to get us to that point. So what I've done already is I've established my track level and where my bridges are going to be, roughly. And I've got these little blocks in here kind of filling in for piers for now. We are going to build real piers, but for now that's close enough. And then I've recessed my 2-inch foam so it's level with the framework of the layout, and that is giving me my depth here. And that is, I've got a very severe drop here, and some of this is going to be water, so there's going to be some amount of water that's going to come on up here, and the rest of it is going to be land that's going to sort of tributary itself out here into a marshy area. But I need to leave the track area high enough so that it's not in the swamp, so to speak. Okay, it's best to stay out of the swamp, and that's what we're going to do. So we're going to basically get a rough idea of what we want to do here, and I'm going to use 2 tools to do that. The first is a standard hot knife, and so I'm going to just show you here. It's on, and if you put it against the foam, it cuts right through it like a hot knife through foam, I guess. And the other option that we have is the Woodland Sinks. This is a hot wire knife. There's a lot of versions around, and once you turn it on, you can set the wire into it and then just kind of pull it or push it, and it'll just cut out a section of foam. So those are the 2 tools that we're going to use. And then, of course, we have the very high-tech tool, which is just a simple box cutter. And it's also good for shaping foam. But the problem with it is it makes lots of little tiny pieces, where this can kind of shave off some bigger chunks and get. Now, I have, in addition to this, I have purchased a series of products. You can kind of see them stacked off to the side here. And those are going to be used to make my swampy, marshy area and make that kind of oceany feel. And so this video is not about that. We're a little ways away from that. This is basically how I'm going to approach my foam work. And I approach this on all foam. It's not just for this scene. It's just kind of getting the feel of what the layout is going to be. So think of this as an artist, right? They have a blank canvas in front of them, and they know what they want to draw. So the first thing that they do is they start sketching basic shapes out, right? They want to get the concept. They want to check to make sure everything's balanced. They kind of want to get the flow of the picture out so that they can check their proportions and everything. Okay, we're going to do the same thing. Then they come in with a little bit heavier line weight. They start to add a little definition. They start to draw things out a little bit so you can kind of start to see what it's going to be. And then from there, they do the fine detail work and they bring the masterpiece to life. And so we are going to do something very similar. Now, you can, in this step, if you want to, you can draw out what you want to do. And I would encourage you to do that, because if you take a pencil or a marker or whatever and you kind of draw what you want to do, then you've got a little bit of a template to follow. And of course, that's a do as I say, not as I do, because I have an idea in my mind of what I want to do here, and I'm just going to kind of do it. Done this once or twice, and I am going to use this canvas to sort of just start making some moves. So I know I want to cut this down and ease this curve. I don't really know how much I want to cut it down yet, because I want to have some depth to the water, and I might want to have some rocky outcroppings. And so I don't really know how far down I want to cut all this yet. So I'm going to just start taking off little bits at a time and start to get a general shape. And I see that and go, yeah, I want to take a little bit more off. So I'm going to come back in here, and I'm going to cut. There are different wire cutters available, and you can absolutely experiment with some of those options. And some of them give you a little bit more flexibility than this one. Some of them you can actually shape. So this one is basically just going to remove, you're kind of limited in what you can do because it makes that U shape, and that actually ends up getting in the way quite a bit. But I know this area is going to be swampy, so I want it to sit down below the rest of the layout or the track bed, and I want to make it look like the railroad either built up the land or they built it on the land that was higher. So either way, I want it to sit a little bit higher than the rest of it. Because I want to model that sort of marshy area, I need to have my water level, where my ocean is, where I'm going to pour that up. But then I need to have some area around it that's also fairly deep here, so that I can justify having the marshy area where water is, maybe kind of a tidal plane sort of deal is what I guess I'm going for here. So I'm going to just kind of shape this here a little bit, and I'm removing most of the big chunks this way to get it down to, where I want it. And I do want it to be a little more severe towards the bridge, like there's an abutment built there. Maybe it's stone, maybe it's natural. I don't know yet what I'm going to do with it, but it gives me an idea of what this is going to look like a little bit. And I'm somewhat limited in what I want to do, or how far I want to go, because, and let me just show you this here real quick. When I come off to the right here, I have this sort of awkward area, and then I'm going to kind of go back into the mountainous terrain. So I want this curve to kind of be where we start getting away from the coastline and start moving back towards the mountain area. And so in doing that, I don't want to take this whole idea too far over, because if I do, then I'm going to end up really changing the whole scenery for the rest of the layout, and I don't want to do that. So this is kind of giving me my rough shape, and that's fine. We're gonna work with that here in a little bit. I'm gonna come to my other side here, and that means I'm gonna move you over just a little tiny bit, and I'm going to repeat this process once again, staying kind of far back away from the track. Now this side is a little bit different, and the reason it's a little bit different is because it is directly adjacent to the pier. So I want this to be a lot more water over here and a lot more marshy over here, because it's not going to have a whole lot of land between it and the pier. So And yes, I know I'm using port and terminal and peer, and I'm using all these things it's almost interchangeably, but you know what I'm talking about. You know where you know what part of the layout I'm working on here. So this whole thing is going to be cut out way, 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 way low. So what I want to do, and because I want some degree of scene separation, I am going to make this sort of a little island here. Okay, so my rough thought is, so that you can get into my mind, is here's going to be this tributary, this bay area, or maybe it's a river going out to the ocean. Doesn't matter how that looks because it's going to have very similar setting. And then I've got the port, and the port is going to start just to the left here. So if I move you over, so I can show you what I'm thinking. So where that boat is I kind of want to make this almost like a little bit of a causeway. So I've got my two tracks here. So I want to put water on the back side. I want to have some land here, and then I want to put water on this side. I'm not modeling it off of any location. I'm just taking images from what I've seen and where places I've been, and I'm sort of mashing them together to get all the qualities of those areas that I like. And the advantage of having a freelance railroad is I don't have to follow specific locations or specific details. I can make this up as I go. Now, going back to kind of planning it out, this is another season to taste sort of thing. So I'm just eyeballing this, and I'm making the cuts and the adjustments that sort of look pleasing to my eye, and I'm taking less over more, and I'm just going to keep making cuts and slices and adjustments until I get something that I go, yes, that is what I'm looking for. And at this point, I'm just removing material. I'm not really thinking about those details just yet. And if you're one of those people that needs to plan everything out and draw everything out, then this probably is not the method for you. But I know that I got my wire stuck around my tripod here, so I know that. But let's just come in here. And yeah, like I said, you can do this with a regular knife. A regular knife works. The hut knife just works a little bit better. And sorry if that screeching styrofoam sound bothers you. This is probably not the product to use. But you can do a couple of things with a hot knife. If you can't get it to where you want to actually cut out the parts you want, you can actually cube the foam. And by cubing the foam, let me just kind of show you what that looks like here. And obviously this stuff is not glued in yet. So, and there's a reason for that. But if you cube it like this, and then you cut across this way, and I realize that my arm is somewhat in the way, but I think you can see what I'm doing. You make these little cubes, and I know they're still attached on the bottom, but what you can do is you can go with the unconventional or the more conventional knife, and you can actually use those cuts to get in here and sort of trim this all down, and then you end up with these little cubes that come out. And I find it easier to work this way because you can almost kind of pop them out, and then you don't end up with all these, you can just grab the pieces, and instead of doing what I did and dumping them off to the side, you can just dump them right into the garbage bag or whatever you're using. And I like that method better. I find it's easier to cut to than trying to cut down with the regular blade, because you should have a sharp blade, but they dull pretty fast. So having the hot knife to sort of just work through this, and gentlemen, I said hot knife, not hot wife. The hot wife is a totally different process, but this just sort of lets you work this a little bit better and lets you kind of cut through. I think it goes without saying, anytime you cut something, especially styrofoam, you do release some chemicals from the product, and breathing those chemicals is not ideal. And by rights, you should have it in a good ventilated space. You should have some air moving. If I'm going to do this for a long time, I will turn a fan on. Just the little bit here that I'm doing it for the little bit of time that I'm shooting this video. I'll be honest with you, I don't have a fan running. If you're super sensitive to that kind of stuff, you also might want to have a respirator. You can get different cartridges for your respirator. I'm not talking a P90 or a K95 or any of those kind of paper masks that everybody thought did something and they don't, because these are not. You're not trying to prevent particulates. You're trying to prevent basically vapors, and so you have to have an actual respirator for that. So wearing a surgical mask will do absolutely nothing. Wearing a N95, that's the one I was looking for. N95 mask will do absolutely nothing. You need a cartridge respirator, and you need to be properly test fit for those. You can't just go out and, I mean, you can go out and just get them, but to wear them, you need to have them test fit to make sure they're actually doing what they're supposed to do. I think that's a lot for a little hobby, but if you are super sensitive to it, then you should go and get test fit. And most of those quick mobile places can do a test fit for you, so you just got to call ahead and make sure that they can do it, and they'll line it all up and make sure that you're not going to breathe any of this stuff in. You could also just turn a fan on, whatever. It all works. But, okay, so you can kind of see how I'm cutting this out, and, how I'm gonna build this up. And you see, the more that I cut with the regular knife, I get sort of like, get these little tiny pieces that are all just sort of very staticky. So I do try to cut as much as I possibly can with my knife, and you can see the stuff burning off my knife. I don't know if you can see it in the camera there, but you can see the smoke coming off. So I mean, there's definitely some bad stuff coming off of here that you don't want to breathe. Definitely don't work right over it. That would just not be a good day. You'll start getting a headache. If you do start getting a headache, get away from the area. Go turn a fan on. Just be smart. I trust that you're smart enough to know when you got something going on that's not good. But okay, so back to the original thing here. Yeah, I'm not going to make you sit here and watch as I shape styrofoam all night, because basically what I've shown you here is the 3 techniques that I am going to use to cut this down. Okay, so to get this to the shape that I want, which is essentially my river base here, and then some marshy area here and here. This is going to be a little more hillsidey, getting back out onto the land, but this is going to be marshy over here, because I'm going to have the layout up here, the railroad up here, and then on both sides I'm going to have some amount of water feature. Now, the other thing that I did mention, and this is a great time to bring it up, is I said I didn't have this glued down yet. Okay, so the reason for that is because I can slide these pieces out, and that makes getting the wire cutter in there, let me dump these on the floor here, getting the wire cutter in here a lot more feasible, because now I can kind of come in from the side and I can cut it down like this, and I can get it from some different angles, and I can really move the material around. I'm not worried, just like the artist who's trying out his sketching, I'm not worried about perfection at this. Just pulled my wire apart. I'm not worried about perfection at this point. I am just worried about getting in the rough shape. I'm not even worried about taking out too much material. If your wire comes undone, you can't heat it up anymore, and obviously it's going to be stuck wherever it is. peel off as much of that foam as you can to try to get to it to free it up, because if you yank on it, you'll just break it. And so right now it's not broken, and I don't want to break it. So try to free it as best you can without. There we go. And then we'll just rewrap it. So that is that will happen, especially because I was pulling on it, and then which is how you usually use it. Then I went to push for that last cut, and it did not like that action. And in doing that, I think I may have twisted this one too many times, and the wire was too brittle and it broke. So now I got to replace the wire. Okay, I'm going to give you the PSA here. The tools that I'm using are sharp. They are hot. And they produce an off gas and chemicals from the burning process of styrofoam. All of these things are dangerous to your health, and if you are the same type of person who would burn themselves on hot coffee and then sue, you probably shouldn't be using these products because you are a menace to society. So be very careful when you do this. The knives are sharp. The hot wires and hot knives are hot and sharp, and they will go through you relatively quickly. And the beautiful thing about these knives is they are so sharp, especially the hot knife, that it will cut you very, very fine, like a paper cut. And it doesn't matter if the knife is on or off, it's still sharp. But if it's on, you get the added benefit of not only getting cut but also burned. So do not touch that part of the knife. Always work your knife away from you to make sure that you can't slip, and just watch your hand placement, and never work directly over it unless you are wearing a respirator, because you will breathe in that fume from the melting styrofoam, and it is toxic. You'll start getting lightheaded, and just it's not good for the inside parts, so don't do that. But if you don't have access to an actual respirator, do not fall under the false pretense that an N95 mask or surgical mask is going to protect you from the vapors. It is not, and it'll still irritate you. So you need a fitted respirator for vapors. Okay, but if you've got a respirator, then you should be okay. If you don't, and even if you do, you should have fans on. You should be moving air away from you. You should have some ventilation. It should be open, especially if you're going to do it for any length of time. We did a little bit here, so it's fairly open, and it's already dissipated. But just be mindful when you're out there that this stuff is not necessarily safe. So just be kind of careful with it. But that is how we are going to build this scene, and I will keep you guys kind of posted and updated here as we go. Okay, so I'm going to tell you that this will probably take me several modeling shifts to finalize. And it's not going to be finalized for this video, and it's going to be a work in progress as we go through this. But what I wanted you to see is that, it's starting to take shape. So my water line is going to come up here at some point, and I'm trying to think here. This is not going to be a body of water that boats are going to be going under. So I'm probably going to bring my water level up to about here. And so if that's going to be the way it is, and I can, sort of detail a little bit of an underwater scene here, get some waves going, then I'm probably going to cut this down a little bit more, and then maybe a little bit more on this side, because this is going to be, remember, this is going to be my not as swampy side. This is going to be where my swampy side is. So a couple of things that I want you to take away from this. One, I showed you the basic tools that we're using. Two is, I don't want you to think that you can take too much off. You can, and you can not have something at the elevation you want, but when that happens, just come in with your glue and glue another piece of foam on, wait for it to dry, and then start shaping it again. It's like the eraser for an artist, okay? So you can't really screw it up. And even if you do screw it up, you can unscrew it up. There's not many things in life you can unscrew up that easy, but this is one. For adhesives, I like to use a couple of different adhesives. Liquid nails for projects. A little dyslexia there. Liquid liquid nails for projects. Foam safe is very strong, will bond your foam to your wood, no problem. For working with it outside of just regular, stacking foam, I have tried this weld bond stuff. I picked it up at, I believe it was Hobby Lobby. It was definitely Hobby Lobby. Carries it, had it on the shelf, and it pretty much bonds to damn near everything. So I gave it a shot, and it works nice. It doesn't dry fast, so you do need to set it and wait it, but it's good. It gives you some working time, so you can kind of liquid projects or liquid nails does give you some working time, but it's a lot thicker. And once it starts to set, it really kind of bonds on there and doesn't want to let go. So it's I use that more for sort of a construction adhesive than I do for just modeling. And that one, like I said, that weld bonds a little, gives you a lot more playtime. So I'm gonna keep working this scene, and I may end up adding pieces. I may end up adding a little delta in here, which I'll do out of foam, and then I will, once I get the basic shape done that I'm happy with, then I will glue these pieces down officially, and then it's on to the next step, which is plaster cloth and hydrocal and painting and all kinds of other stuff, sculpt and mold, all that sort of stuff to get the final texture. I'm just roughing out the main shapes here. So that is how I work with foam. And I will tend to not do it all in one setting either, unless I really have a vision. Like I know, boom, this is exactly what I want to do. I kind of let it cook a little bit. So I'll get it to this point and I'll go, okay, yeah, I don't know what else I want to do here. So I'll go work on the other side, or I'll go work on the back side, or I'll go work over here, and I'll work a big area all at one time and see how it all flows together. And then I'll come back over here and go, you know what, I need to take a little bit more off. I need to add a little bit more. Or maybe I'll say, okay, well, I'm going to add a little bit with some sculpt and mold here. And I just sort of let it kind of develop. So think of the artist with his different line weights. I'm starting off with my lighter line weights, and I'm just sort of building it up until I really start fleshing out the details. By the time I'm bringing in my plaster, my sculpt and mold, that is my fine detail. I am working that scenery out to get it finalized. And then after I've got all my line work in and I know where everything's at and I can see how it's going to be, that's when I bring in my coloring, my coloring skills, and I start to shape. So like I know this is going to be, because this is ocean water, but it's probably shallower, it's still murky. It's going to be a combination of blues and browns and white caps and everything, as that water is still being, affected by the tide, obviously, but it's the main ocean breeze and everything is sort of out beyond this. So we're gonna mimic all that and try to get that, feel in here. But this is how I handle foam work. And if you take a similar approach, I think you're going to find it actually pretty enjoyable. There's something soothing in taking that foam off and just kind of cutting it down and carving it and seeing that, and looking at it, see how it goes, and go, okay, I've got the vision. Then keep working at it until you get it to where you want it. So we're going to keep working this scene. You are going to see it in future updates here as we go. And then for the members of the Patreon page, I know it's not live yet, but for the members of the Patreon page, there will be a step-by-step tutorial on how I did this particular scene. But for the rest of us here on YouTube, you will just kind of get to see it as we progress. So that's how I'm approaching the initial groundwork to getting the first part of the harbor scene in. I'm very excited about it because I've been kind of wanting to do this between, I know I have like diametrically opposed likes here. Right below it I have the winter scene, and then right above it here I'm going to have this warm sort of oceany scene. I get it, like I got a mess going on here, but if that bothers you, always remember it's not your railroad, it's my railroad. So you don't have to like it, but it's gonna be cool. So I'm looking forward to getting it done, and try it on your own layout. Try the different techniques between the regular knife and the hot knife.